Hey, welcome to another very special session of Countdown to Outbound. I'm Mark Hunter, the sales hunter. And, I just don't have my cup of coffee because it's 5 p.m. here in Central Time in the United States, 8 a.m. in Australia, with the exception of Perth. But hey, okay, it's going to that part. But hey, in just a moment, we have coming into the studio, Mike Adams is going to be joining us. He is the storyteller. And I'll tell you what, he's got some really, really cool stuff. So, hey, why don't we just stop the chit chat? Let's get to the video, and we're going to get Mike in here to talk. Good morning, Friday morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Mark. I've had my cup of coffee. It was an espresso with a bit of hot cream.
Ooh, that sounds good. That sounds good. More importantly, it's Friday morning in Australia. Exactly. Fridays are always a good day. I mean, here it's still Thursday night. I still got work to do, but hey, it's great. We have chatted by way of email because I've read your book and so forth, but we've never actually met. So this is great. We are meeting virtually here. So, hey, great to connect with you. And, it's interesting. You got more than a few books behind you. So, but there's one book, your book, that's really kind of cool. Tell the audience a little bit about your background and the book that you wrote, because I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's long and short versions of that story, Mark. I'll give you the relatively short one. I'm trained as an engineer. I'm a technical engineer kind of guy. But I got into sales by accident, like the way most people get into sales. And I got to leading very large sales teams in big corporations. I'm talking hundreds of salespeople. And I used to say, like, my recurring problem was how to get these guys to say the right thing. I would be typically in this sort of, big meeting with the CTO, with, an important client, trying to kick my sales guy under the table because, they wanted to talk about features and benefits and jump into solutions before the client was ready to do that. And also they spoke in this sort of abstract language that we understood, as in vendor land, we understood that language, but our clients didn't. And that got me thinking about storytelling because I'd used stories in my own sales career. And so I left big corporations in 2015, set up on my own and started experimenting with teaching salespeople with stories instead of what is really, behind me, Mark, is the sort of traditional question answer approach to having conversations, which is still needed. But when you inject stories into that conversation, the whole conversation comes alive, and it doesn't sound like the sales guy running through his cheesy list of questions. And so that's what I do now. I work exclusively pretty much with very large corporations, like top Fortune 100 companies. I'm very fortunate to work with a company called Anecdote, which is an international business storytelling company. And I head up the sales part of that. And it's exciting times because business is opening up and companies are realizing that their people have to connect with their buyers. And it's not about being a machine. It's about being a human to do that. And stories is the language of humans.
Wow, that's I love what you just said. Stories is the language of humans.
It is. Humans understand each other through story. It has to be two-way, by the way. It's not storytelling, it's story sharing. I tell you a story and you tell me a story back. That's kind of how you feel. When I tell you a story, you're probably thinking of the times you told stories and you'd like to tell me a story back. And this is how we get into deep conversations with our buyers when we start sharing stories. And it's not very well understood. The very best salespeople do this almost unconsciously, that they don't know they're doing it. But it's something you can teach, it's something you can learn, and it's something you can prepare. What story should I be telling this client at what time? So you can get ready and prepare that. And it makes a very profound difference to the conversation.
You said something there. It's not storytelling, it's story sharing.
Correct.
Because you're right. It does. I've always heard, the best stories are ones that kind of pull the other person in, they can relate to, they can connect to. But you're taking it a step further, saying sharing. And wow, that is so powerful. So when does story sharing begin in the sales process? Does it begin at the prospecting phase? Does it begin further on? Where does it begin at?
I think it begins right with curiosity. Humans are very curious about stories, and we want stories to finish, to complete. And we can use, let's say, the story of how successful we were with another client to get a prospect interested by putting out part of the story, maybe just in an email message line. So when we think in terms of story, if we've collected a good story, a client that we've succeeded with, we can use parts of that story to engage a client. And then they're like, well, tell me what went on. And then you can tell the story on the telephone or in a first meeting. And then when you share that story about the other buyer, you say something like, well, enough about them, what's going on around here? And they share the situation with what's going on with them back to you. So that's how the storytelling starts right at the beginning, and it ends even after you've signed the contract, because those stories that you told through the buying process get retold through your buying organization, and they bind your company to the buying organization. So they do magical, mostly invisible work all the way from the beginning to the end.
It really is amazing how stories take on a life of their own after the fact. And that's what customers remember. That's what people remember. But I love, again, how you said that. And I encourage people to back up the video a couple minutes, because you said you get done with the story and then you invite the other person into it by having them share. And I think that just becomes so natural. Yeah.
Exactly right. And I'll give you an example of a story that has its own life, Mark, because that made me think of a story. And I was working with a software company. It's a systems integration software company last year. And the sales guy told this great story in one of our training courses. He said, because we were talking about values, we were talking about what are the behaviors and values that your company stands for, because that's no good on a website. You've got to have that in story content. And he said, Mike, I brought a contract in for signing to our CEO, and it was a contract for a reseller agreement. It was one of our suppliers, and the CEO was reading through that contract, and he got to the line that said our company would get a 10% commission for any product or service that we sold. And he got his pen out of his pocket and he crossed that clause out, and he said to me, we don't get paid by our suppliers, we get paid by our client. That could lead to a conflict of interest. And I thought, man, what a great value story. And I've told that story lots of times, and he's told it. And of course, it's told within his client organization. And it's a great example of what we call story triggering. It's the CEO doing something that triggers a story that just gets told and told and told through an organization. So we say in Anecdote, there's 3 types of story work. There's storytelling, and that will elicit a story from the buyer. They'll tell us a story back, which means story listening. We have to listen and ask them, well, what happened next? How did that go? We need to really get that story. But there's also story triggering, which means someone in your company doing something that's so out of the ordinary that people notice it and they go, I'll tell that story. And that story travels through the organization.
There's something else that you said there in terms of that CEO sharing that story. It really tells you a lot about the CEO.
It tells you a lot about
the organization. Yeah.
We all infer things from stories, Mark. When we hear a story, we infer what's going on. And I would infer about that company that it's a values-based company and that I could trust to work with that company, which is exactly what I would want my buyer to think, right? And then, of course, it's true. We want to tell true stories about our company, because otherwise we get ourselves in very serious trouble very quickly.
Yeah. Where do we draw the line, though, on too much storytelling? I mean, do we run that risk?
We do, Mark, in a few different ways. The biggest way people get themselves into trouble is not being relevant with their story. So we're not just telling stories for story's sake, right? We're using them to make a point. And if we start interacting with senior business people and you just start a story and they think like, where's this going? They can get irritated very quickly. So what we teach is the use of a relevant statement. So we might say this to a CEO, look, I'd like to make a point about, for example, the importance of doing a trial before you run this program, all the way through your company. And then you would tell a story about someone who didn't run a trial and how badly it went. But you see, the listener knows why you're telling the story. And the other thing is you have to practice these stories so they're nice and tight. We tell really just little anecdotes, 1-2 minute stories. So it's not like the whole meeting devolves into stories. That's not at all what happens. It's just that we're using them as examples so that people really understand what we're talking about. Okay. Probably what most salespeople don't appreciate, Mark, is that most of the time your buyers have no idea what you're talking about and you don't understand them. You have no idea what they mean when they say stuff. Until we get into examples with stories, then we start to understand. And that's the real reason we're doing this.
Yeah. But again, like you said, you were given the example of trial. You want to get into a trial. And then let me share with you a story about a company that chose not to do a trial.
That's
so
right.
It's not like you can say, hey, look, village idiot, if you don't do a trial, you're stupid. No, let me tell you what happened. So you almost kind of defer to this painting of this picture, so to speak, which is really what a good story is. You're painting a picture.
That's exactly right. You've picked it right on. If I say you're crazy because you've got to do a trial, we call that an assertion, right? That's an opinion. And it's not that well received by the buyer because for a couple of reasons, they're not quite sure what you mean by a trial. Is that 5 years, Mark, or what? But as soon as you give the example of the story and you just say when it was and where it was and how it happened, they go, oh, yeah, I get it. Yeah, we need to do a trial. So we're just making ourselves understood with stories. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever come back and repeat the same story to the same customer?
I have some stories. So this is the thing about stories, Mark. Really good stories are somewhat rare and they get used again and again and again. We have lots of clients and we can tell a good story many times, but some stories are a little bit more tactical. An example would be like a success story. If I'm talking to the CFO from a bank and it's a big corporation and it's in the US, I would like to tell that guy or girl, a lady, a success story of another CFO in the finance industry in the United States, because that's what's going to connect with them. So I need that kind of catalog of stories for that situation. But a value story about anecdote and how we behave, we use that every day of the week, So, yeah. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Hey, now I hope you're going to be talking about storytelling.
I'm doing 2 talks, Mark.
Good.
And the first, what I'm trying to get through in 2 talks, so it's about, I think each talk's about 50 minutes long. I'm going to get through what is a story and what is not a story, because a lot of people are confused by that. There's a lot of people talk story. And if you want to know, does this person know what they're talking about? Just notice, are they telling any stories? Because so many people talk stories and they're not telling a story. But you have to know what one is. You have to know how to look out for them. And then I'm going to go into the types of stories salespeople must tell through the buying process and selling process. And then I'm going to go into story listening and how to get your client stories and how to use them to go back into your own organization and influence your own organization. Because when we're doing big deals, that's my career has been doing, many tens of $1 million deals. We spend as much time internally as externally, unfortunately, right? We have to persuade our own company why they should do business with this new buyer. And then I'm going to teach about story triggering, and then I'm going to talk about mastery. How do you get better and better and better at storytelling?
Okay, so we're really going to get kind of a master class.
You get the full.
We're going to get a master class on storytelling from the master storyteller himself, Mike Adams, over the 2 days. Now we've got to explain to the audience kind of how Outbound Down Under works, because what it does is it starts at 10 a.m. on Thursday and Friday. Now 10 a.m. Australia time for the East Coast of Australia, 10 a.m. And on Thursday and Friday, where we got you and 4 other dynamite Australian thought leaders in the sales space sharing. And that really comes on the heels of the live event that happens in Atlanta. We're going to get done at about 5 or 5:30. And we go to Victor Antonio, Sales After Dark. It's a special thing that he'll do for about an hour. And then, boom, we cut away live to you guys down under, where it'll already be Friday morning. So it's going to be a pretty special couple of days. Really, really cool. And of course, what's nice is you buy the online ticket and online access, and you get all the Down Under content and all the Atlanta content and all the other virtual content, because the virtual program actually starts on the 13th. So it really runs for 5 days, various hour. And of course, when you get the virtual ticket, you get to access the stuff after the fact. Because I know, like myself, I mean, I'm participating. I'm part of the main stage and some of the other events. And I'm not going to have a chance to watch everything right then. But man, I'm going to make sure I'm able to devour it stuff in the days and the weeks following. So, hey, I bet you have a code, right? You have a code for people to save.
I have a code. It's Anecdote 100. So Anecdote's the name of our business storytelling company. We're all over the world.
Okay.
Let's say one thing, Mark. When I sat down to plan what I would speak about in these 2 sessions, I had this thought in my mind. I'm going to make sure whoever watches these 2 sessions gets the full value of the Outbound ticket price just in these 2 sessions. This is my intention. You get the lot.
I tell you what, somebody asked me today, they said, is it something I can afford to go to? And I said, you can't afford not to, because the return on investment you're going to get because of all of the strategies, all of the ideas, everything you're going to learn is just going to be, you're going to have to, I tell you what, I'm telling people, you better be prepared to take a lot of notes, and you better be prepared also to take a couple days after it's over to really sit down and digest and figure out, okay, now how do I apply all this? Because there's going to be that much good stuff there for you. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. I am pumped. Yeah, really is cool. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, because we're going to have to wrap this up, and I want you to stick around for the after the show. How do people get in touch with you? What is your website? So
we're anecdote.com.
And why don't you find me on? Why don't you spell that out for the audience?
Anecdote, as in anecdote's a small story. So ANECDOTE.com.
Got it.
And anyone can find me very easily. If you put Mike Adams 7 Stories, then you get pages of stuff, and you can find my book and our YouTube site and all of that stuff. Yeah, there's lots of stories on YouTube.
Yeah, and of course that's the name of your book, 7 Stories.
7 Stories every salesperson must tell.
Right. And I love it because it really walks you through the strategies, and it's packed full of a lot of examples there. So that's great. So, hey, we've been talking with Mike Adams, I'm going to call you master storyteller. I don't know.
Thank you. You are too.
I mean, it really is. No, because it is. It's an element of sales that we need to be including a lot more of. Yeah.
It's a bit invisible, isn't it? And, Mark, there's a lot of talk about sales jobs disappearing and machines taking over. And I don't buy into that, because it's easy to see where jobs disappear. It's hard to see where they get created.
Yeah.
And salespeople are problem solvers. We have to creatively solve problems. We have to figure out how to sell what we have, how to find buyers, how to make the right deal, how to close that deal. It's problem. And that today requires people. We don't have machines that can solve unknown, poorly created problems. So we create as many jobs as we lose. That's the history. Everyone predicts we're going to lose jobs, and they're usually wrong. But salespeople need to be creative, and storytelling is such a tool for creativity, for really understanding.
It really is.
And so there's work for us forever.
Good. Oh yeah, there's work for us. Hey, we've been talking with Mike Adams, and like I said, master storyteller. I'm Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter. And hey, stick around for the after the show. We're going to be right back. Told you that was a short video. Hey, it's great to connect with you. Now, what part of Australia are you from?
I'm in Melbourne, Mark.
Melbourne. Oh, I'll tell you what.
With Bernadette, so we catch up from time to time. And yes, Tony's in Sydney and LJ's up in Brisbane.
Yeah, so, I love Melbourne. It is one of the 3 cities I would move to in a heartbeat. Yep.
It's an easy place to live, I have to tell you.
Oh, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I just love it down there by the river, where the river
Oh yeah, it's
convention center
gorgeous.
is, and all the shops and just the restaurants, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful city.
So how's the
Thoroughly.
stress level, Mark? Is it all coming together for Outbound? Are you?
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I mean, believe me, there's a lot of stress. There is so much.
There has to be.
The magnitude for Australians who are watching this, the video screen in Atlanta is actually, I was wrong. It's 37 meters across.
Oh, really?
37 meters across. So be thinking about that. It's about 123 feet of video screen across. That's how big this is. I mean, it really is. Outbound is truly a rock show disguised as a sales meeting.
Yeah, and, well, credit to you guys, to Jeb and Anthony and Victor, because look, I can just imagine like the whole year that we've had must have tripled the stress that you had to think, putting this on.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get a chance to do it a year ago, and this is the first year that we've streamed it, so we're doing some cool stuff there. But yeah, it really is cool. It really is neat the way it's all coming together. So we're excited, and I mean, this really has come together well, because Outbound Down Under probably would not have happened if we had not had the pandemic.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's
to a certain degree. This is really allowing Outbound to be a truly global event, and it's hard to say where this is going to be in 2022, because it's going to be even.
Well, we have a big convention center here in Melbourne. I don't see why not, Mark.
Well, there you go. Well, we could be sitting here running parallel programs.
So anyway. We could have you guys over here.
There you go. There you go. We could be doing a lot of things. So anyway, hey, I want to say thank you very much. It's been great to meet you. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to catching your sessions, and we'll see you in just a couple of weeks. And I'm glad Friday morning's going well, because I'm looking forward to it. After I get done with work here, have dinner, eventually get to bed, and wake up, and it'll be Friday morning for us. So anyway,
thanks, Mark.
Take care. You bet.